Good morning, and thank you for joining us in this episode of Clarity in Crisis. And with us is our esteemed guest, Dr. Brown. Thank you, Dr. Brown, for joining us again. How are you this morning?
Great, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Today we're going to be talking about career breakdown through breakthrough in our ongoing series, Clarity in Crisis. Welcome to Angie Speaks of Eve Speaks. Here we are dogged, determined, and just relentless in pursuing the next best version of ourselves in all the areas of our lives that matter. So today, as we talk about a breakdown to a breakthrough as it pertains to our career, we know that God is a way maker, a promise keeper, and a light in the darkness. There's a lot of darkness right now with COVID-19, a financial meltdown, racial tensions. We know yet that God is a way maker. And with that being said, I just want to start off by saying I had my personal breakdown in my career about 15 years ago. I went to see my boss. I asked him for a raise because I had been the only one there for quite some time, only salesperson, only revenue generator. And I asked him for a raise, and he looked at me and he said, and that wasn't the first time I'd asked, but this time I was just like, I need to make more money, considering all the revenue that's coming in. And he looked at me and he said, Angela, if you were in India, we would just pay you $30,000 a year as a cold caller and send you home. He had no shame in his game. That's what he said. And I thought to myself, this is it. So I quit. But the breakdown for me was the feeling that I was here putting all my energies into somebody else's dream who did not value me. And I think before we can get to a breakthrough, we have to be aware of what causes the breakdown, right? Is that correct, Ms. Dr. Brown?
Absolutely.
Awareness is key with just about anything. If you're not aware, you can't really make much progress. So for me, it took me a while to be aware that I had a sense of self issues. I had issues with feeling like I had something valuable to bring to the table, even though it was clear that I didn't believe it. So my mindset had to be rectified. But it took time to get to that place of awareness. I had to become aware that some of the things that I'd gone through as a child contributed to my insecurity and my fears and my own sense of feeling devalued. So as we discuss this on this show today, please be sure to jump in with your own stories or ask questions. That's why we have Dr. Brown here. But I can tell you that a breakthrough is definitely possible because I experienced it. As a matter of fact, yesterday I was spotlighted in the city of New York's weekly, I don't know what you want to call it, their spotlight version, to let the city know that as a minority woman business, I've been able to close up to $5.4 million of contracts only with the city so far, just alone with the city. Doesn't account for the state or the federal government. So I went from being told that I would have to go home as a cold caller to now running an IT consultancy where I'm being spotlighted by the city. So I want to encourage you to believe in the possibility, the promise that is yours as well. So Dr. Brown, please tell us, what are some of the things that lead to a breakdown?
Well, there are many things.
Mm-hmm.
A very important thing is to be aware of who you are, to know your value, your worth, and these things that you don't necessarily have control of. These are things that come from being brought up in a home where you had the proper supports. You had parents who are aware of the fact that you needed to have certain skills in order to live in life. And to the best of their ability, they're able to provide it for you. I think another thing that has to do with basically what we're talking about is being successful in the workplace is having a skill, a valuable skill, being good at it. You know, you can have a skill just like you have a grade. You could be a C, a B, or an A student. You want to have your skill and be an A person with it, especially if you're thinking about moving ahead in life. You also need to know the place that you've chosen to work in. What is the company's values? Do they fit yours? At one point, I used to teach, and I taught people who had to go into the field work, into business. Mm-hmm. And I had a young lady who graduated and decided that she was going to go to work for this company. Now, this young lady was a nice Christian woman, but she was a Catholic, actually. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Christians, Catholics, everybody needs to eat. And the company that she saw to go into was an abortion clinic because they paid well. Well, now a big difference in value. Now, if she chose to go into that company, it would mean that she would be in constant conflict with what she believed. And she had two choices. One choice is to try to convert everybody, which isn't going to work, especially because she took the job because it was the highest paid job at the time. I think everybody else may have been making something like $40,000, and in that area, it was $80,000.
Wow.
So she could either stay and try to convert everyone, or she could recognize that there was a conflict and that she couldn't stay, at least not for long, and then make plans to leave. Oftentimes, people either are not aware of the fact that there are differences in values, and they spend a lot of time fighting, trying to make everybody see the world the way they are. That doesn't work.
So what I'm getting from you then is that the self-awareness, again, that's a common theme in this series that we have, Clarity in Crisis. The self-awareness would have let her know off the bat that because she has a value for pro-life, joining an abortion clinic was just not a good idea. So it wasn't a good idea because it's not consistent with her values to preserve life. Am I correct?
Well, it wasn't the best idea at all. However, when you are maybe facing eviction, maybe you have children, maybe you have food, sometimes food issues, sometimes people make adjustments that they probably shouldn't. But if they do, they need to be able to recognize that that is what they are doing and not try to bring everybody else into their drama.
Right. So you can do it as long as you're aware, but you can't do it and not be aware that you need to have a plan to get out of it. In other words, I think in my situation, I wasn't aware that I had issues from a child, that I had self-esteem issues, feeling like I can't do anything right, the anxiety that would play such a big role in everything that I do, because I wasn't aware of how I was brought up, how it was going to impact my adult life. I went into job situations just accepting anything because, well, I didn't know any better. I just wasn't aware. I had no one that had showed me what it is to have a healthy mindset in terms of my abilities and feeling valued and treasured. So preventing a breakdown, you were saying, is number one, we have to be aware of ourselves, making sure that we select a culture that's consistent with our value in the workplace. What's another way that we can avoid a breakdown in the workplace?
Well, it helps to be aware of what emotional intelligence is. book written by a man named Daniel Goleman many years ago, and it's been updated. But essentially, it's about understanding yourself, your plus and your minuses, understanding other people, your plus and your minuses, and thereby being able to negotiate situations in your best interests. You may not always get exactly what you want, but you will get a lot closer than if you are not aware of who you are and other people. Usually that sort of thing ends up being with arguments, grudges, disagreements, that kind of thing.
So emotional intelligence, if you had to define it in one or two sentences, what would you say it is? Because it sounds so sophisticated. Are you emotionally intelligent? Like, what does that mean? I mean,
Are you your emotions? Are you aware of other people's emotions? Are you aware that you know, there are many personalities in the world? And are you sufficiently aware of all these things to be able to negotiate and get what you need and want for yourself, for your business, for your job?
The ability to negotiate so that there's a win-win outcome. Is that the idea?
Well, now win-win, that's the next thing that you need to know how to do. And that is to communicate effectively. And communicating effectively means communicating in a way where you know you need something, but before you get something, you have to be able to be willing. Many people go off into, I want what I want and I don't care about you. That doesn't work very well. Other people go off into, I'm going to get what I want by wearing you down, by making you feel guilty. If you feel so guilty, you'll give me what I want. I encountered that a lot as a professor in school. I was given an assignment, and of course, the next class meeting, I expected the assignment to be done. And inevitably, one person would tell me, oh, you left this out, I didn't understand this. Oh, it was your fault why I couldn't do my assignment. You know? Well, that doesn't work very well. It didn't work then, and it certainly won't work in the workplace. And then other people communicate by being spiteful, just mean people, want their way. And when you get two people like that, somebody's gonna get hurt. So how you communicate really, really matters. And to communicate effectively, again, means communicating in a way where you're respectful of the other person and yourself.
So what I'm hearing so far, it sounds like these are just building blocks. It's like my kids playing Legos. If you don't have the foundation set, it's going to be hard later on as an adult to really know how to navigate the workplace or your career so that it can bring you the greatest joy and harmony and profit that you desire. So this thing of laying the right foundation, if you didn't get you didn't get it when you were younger, if your parents weren't aware that they needed to give you the proper upbringing, which, by the way, can you define what the proper upbringing would be for a child growing up so that they can navigate their career path?
Okay, well, I happen to favor Erik Erikson's developmental milestones, because I think it works. And in his milestone, he talks about the need for us to have faith in our environment. We have to be able to trust the people around us. And it's very, very early in life. Good heaven, before you even know your name. As in, when I'm hungry, who shows up to feed me?
Wow.
I need my diaper change. Who shows up to change it so I don't end up being uncomfortable with sores?
Oh,
when
wow.
I hug, who shows up to give me a hug? And you know, if no one shows up when I need them, I learned pretty early in life that the world is not a safe place. And so I become suspicious and fearful of whatever is going to happen next. And that stays with us until and unless we take some effort to address, to be aware of the problem, to be committed to changing it, and then to do the work to change it.
Well, that really speaks to me, because this idea that when my diaper needs changing, who's going to show up? When I need a hug, who shows up to hug me? When I need to eat, who's going to feed me? You're saying those things contribute later on to how I adapt or not adapt to the workplace. In my case, I could see how hearing dishes being broken, splinters all over the house, would definitely contribute to my sense of insecurity and definitely overwhelming anxiety. That makes so much sense to me. What else?
Yes. The other thing is that we need to have a sense of control and to feel, we need to feel that we're not going to fall apart if we don't have somebody to hold us together. Okay?
Wow.
Now, if we don't have that feeling, then what comes is shame and self-doubt. We feel shameful and we don't trust our abilities to get things done.
Wow. Sounds like me. Sounds like why I had the reasons why I had a career breakdown. Keep going.
The other is the ability to be a self-starter, to initiate own activities. And that's so simple as when you have a toddler, it's your job to make the place safe. You know, you have to rearrange the furniture and stuff, because otherwise kids, I don't know, they just like to stick their fingers in holes and things like that. And if it happens to be the electric socket, there goes your kid, you know? So if we are around people who are overwhelmed with their own problems and not paying attention to what's going on, then the minute we having to look and see that some danger is coming, we get excited, we get scared, we scream at the kid, and that affects the child's ability to feel that it's free to go and roam and explore things and do things. So instead of sticking their finger in the socket, you'll give them a toy to stick their finger in and they're just happy. And you'll be, because you still have your kid. If that doesn't happen, then the kid feels guilt and feels inadequate.
Wow. Feelings of shame and self-doubt. I remember being in college, and this actually makes me emotional. We had a project to do, and I felt like I couldn't, it was a science class. I think it was chemistry. It may have been chemistry or biology. But I remember just not being able to I felt like I was unable. It wasn't that I couldn't, but I believed that I was unable to actually complete the experiment. And I just started, you know, bumbling all over myself because of that feeling that I had from way when I was younger, that Angie, you can't really do anything right. So it's so important that we are going through this so that people can trace where the dysfunction began that creates this pattern of feeling like they can't accomplish or become the best version of themselves. The seams or the thread starts from very early, because even as I'm going through this, I'm thinking about my own childhood, and it's heartbreaking actually. But there is a way to break through. So what else do they need to be able to?
So we need to have the ability to learn how things work, to understand and to organize, versus to feel inferior because we don't understand and to be disorganized.
That makes sense. I also see here that we need to have a self unique and integrated person. What does that mean? To have a sense of self as a integrated person, as a unique and integrated person? What does that mean?
But I was talking about seeing yourself as a unique and an integrated person. And what that means is that you recognize that there is a difference between you and other people. And that difference is not something that makes you feel less than. It's something that makes you feel special, makes you feel important. And you are okay with who you are versus being confused about who you are and
or wishing that you were somebody else.
About who and what you really are.
Right.
What you are.
So those are the things that would contribute to a proper upbringing of a child. Is that what you're trying to say? That would help them to navigate later on their career path. But it's so important that we make that connection, audience, and for those who are listening, who will listen on the replay, to understand that if you have children in the home, to be very cognizant of the things we say to them, how we respond to them, how we react to them when they make a mistake, when they break a dish, for example, when they mess something up, because they will not remember exactly. I know for myself, I won't necessarily remember exactly what caused the incident, but I will remember how I felt, when something happened back then. I still remember how I felt, even though I can't tell you all the details of what caused me to feel that way. So it's so important now that I have children of my own, that when Rachel stabs up the chair, I don't automatically beat her because she stabbed up the chair. I pull her to the corner and talk to her. Why did you do that? What were you thinking? To have conversations with her, because I understand that my responsibility to her is to make sure that she grows up to be what you call it, a fully integrated and unique person. And so what else can contribute to the success, though, in the workplace?
So the other thing is skill. You need to develop your skill. Now, many people make a mistake, you see. They think if they are good at their skill, they think that that's all that's necessary. Well, you could see skill is important. Basically, you are there to make money for somebody, and to the extent that you are good at it, the more money you'll make for them. But also, they have to get along with you. So that's when those developmental issues come into play. So one of the things about skills, again, here's where human relations come in. No one comes in knowing everything. And every business has a different way of doing things. So now interpersonal relationship, the ability to connect with people become important so that they can pass on information to you to make your job better. If, however, you're angry, suspicious, or any one of those other things, they're going to leave you alone because, oh my goodness, they have enough problems of their own. Thank you very much.
Yes, we all have problems of our own. So you're saying that if these foundational building blocks are not in place when we were younger, and then we grow up and we go into the workplace, those issues, unless they're dealt with, interfere and disrupt our career growth. Even if we are, and if we're not aware of it, it can really wreak havoc, and we will probably jump from job to job or just never really grow as a person and enjoy what a fully functional person would enjoy if they had been aware enough to get the help they need, or if their parents had been aware enough to help them to develop into a whole, unique and integrated individual. Because I know a lot of times, you can start a job and think that, as long as I know how to do things and I know how to do the task and everything is going to be okay. But that may be true, that you do need to have the skill, but if the emotional intelligence is not there and you can't get along with people and it won't matter. It's kind of like in my career as an IT consultant. I meet a lot of engineers. They're very skilled, very intelligent. However, communication is often not their strong point. Excuse me, and so it creates this imbalance. And oftentimes, employers now become aware that if the engineer can't communicate well, they don't speak English well, or they can't, they're not emotionally aware, they won't hire them. No matter how smart, no matter how much certificates they have and degrees, they must be able to communicate. So that's just one example of, you know, making sure that the building blocks are in place, because skill alone won't cut the, you know, it just won't cut it. So being emotionally intelligent definitely is critical to the process. Hello, Clover Taylor. Thank you for joining. Joven and Jester. So I also wanted to ask, what else do they need to be aware of to have that career breakthrough?
Well, as we talked about earlier, they need to make sure they're in the right place. Sometimes we can find ourselves in situations because of crisis. It happens, you know? Sometimes people bring us in and we have no idea what we're getting into, but we know we need to make the money. Well, at some point you have to make time to find out what kind of an agency you're in. Can you really use your best skills there? And while there, you need to understand the chain of command. That's very important, especially when everybody thinks it's my way right away. No, it's not. Okay?
My way right away.
It's you are entering a business, and things are established that way for a reason. And the reason is to make money. And if you want to make changes, you need to know who to go and speak to, present your situation, and wait and see whether or not they're willing to accept it. If it makes sense and it makes money, they will accept it. If not, or for whatever reason, they won't accept it. Now, sometimes there's another phenomenon that happens, and this happens especially in nonprofit agencies all the time. People are there who don't know what they're doing. They're there because their auntie, so-and-so cousin or nephew or somebody, you know, and you know it's inefficient, but some other need that is being met that's higher than your need. Right. And if you try to combat it, you're going to run into problems. For instance, at one point, I worked in a hospital, actually Lenox Hill Hospital, when it was the whole Lenox Hill Hospital. And it was and that meant it was catering primarily to wealthy people. And there was a young lady working there who nobody wanted as a secretary. And since I came as the last person coming in, I got her. Oh, dear God.
You got her what?
She was assigned to me. This woman wanted, and nobody wanted her because she just did exactly what she wanted to do because she wanted to do, and that was that. No one disciplined this woman. She did what she wanted. I mean, she worked within broad guidelines, but she gave you the work when she felt like it. And after much research, I discovered that she was there because her daddy knew she had emotional problems. And in order to sustain her, he made a gift of $1 million to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
She leaves when she wants to leave. I don't care how old she is. I have passed this information on to my banker. And while she's not that smart, I told her if she, for any reason, was not working there, go to the banker, at which point he will ask for the money back plus interest. So $1 million with interest over, I don't know, 15 or 20 years is a lot of money. Nobody was touching her.
Oh,
You have,
wow.
when you have, if you are in that kind of situation, you have to work around it.
Mm. So let me ask this question. How would somebody navigate this current environment in light of getting a breakthrough with COVID-19? I know it's a big question and you probably can't answer it. It's too big. But, in light of COVID-19, the meltdown, racial tensions, a lot of people losing their jobs. I mean, do these things that we're talking about right now, does it really apply? Because people are in some desperate situations and they could have all the proper upbringing, they could have all the skill and still find themselves in a career breakdown. Do you have any nuggets of wisdom for these kinds of people?
Well, whether it's COVID-19 or any other crisis, 19 is just the international crisis. Many of us have had our own version of COVID-19 from very young. We have had to learn how to live with all kinds of oppression and unfortunate situations. And I think that this outline still applies. Why? Because if you are working at your best self, you will find an answer. Creativity is a part of what we are able to do when we are not so bogged down with problems and oppression. In fact, in these times now that, there's a wealth transfer, I understand that's what's really happening. There's a transfer of wealth, okay? The money doesn't die. I had a minister that said this to me one time, Actually, well, he said to me, money doesn't die. It just changes hands. And your job is to find out whose hands it is in now and go after it.
I love that. Money doesn't die, it just changes hands. Your job is just to find out whose hands it is in and go after it. Wow, that's a great nugget right there.
You feel good about yourself, if you have emotional intelligence, if you have a skill, if you are willing to take a chance, something's gonna open up somewhere, even if it means, and this is not an awful thing, you're creating your own job. Isn't that what you did when you had your meltdown?
Yes, that's what I did when I had a meltdown. I definitely had a meltdown. Meltdown, breakdown, however you want to say it, it wasn't good. Yes, I decided that I was going to get off my rump and put my experience into action to profit myself. Now, I started out very insecure, very afraid, very full of trepidation, and that's normal, and people need to know that. And it took a while for me to actually get a groove going. But I realized that I had to believe in myself enough to command the trajectory of my life so that I could have a better outcome. And everybody has to make that decision for themselves. And I know there are different things that contribute to the fears, whether it's an improper upbringing or your own set of insecurities that were developed as an adult, that you develop as an adult. The idea is to seek professional help. And I want you to speak to that very, at this point, Dr. Brown, because getting professional help is really important to this process, to get the awareness that you need to have the breakthrough.
Well, before we go to that, I want to add one more thing. That is, jobs, the needs are changing. So that means career fields are changing. And that means that people will have to be willing to retrain. You will have to consider going into an area maybe that you've never gone into before. The area of technology is booming. The area of medical care is booming, not as well as technology, but it's booming. You see? And so you have to be flexible. That's the other thing. That's very, very important. But I think that's also connected with trust, you see? And let me just say this one thing. I know it always seems as if people only make it because they have all these people and all these supports around them. But I have a client. This man had the most horrible upbringing. He had to encourage his mother to go and get her GED. And while he was doing that, he decided to get his GED. Wow. And upon his GED, he went out to find a job. He was hired by the city of New York. And he was hired as a clerical type person. But he had a bent for computers. He always liked computers. And his boss noticed that he was good at it and decided to help him. Right. Well, fast forward the story, this man is now, his salary is $150,000 a year. And he had a permanent job in the city of New York and he's I think he's a programmer or something like that. I don't know so much about the computer stuff, but whatever he does, it earns him $150,000 a year. So what am I saying? No, if you don't have all the good things, it's not impossible. You have to develop yourself, and that's what he did. Actually, when he tried to go to tech school, they kicked him out. They told him to learn. So he learned on his own. And learning on his own.
He had initiative.
Yes, learning on his own meant that once he learned the thing, all he had to do was go take the test to be certified, and he passed them. And so now this is where he is. So it's not impossible.
That's an awesome story.
It takes work.
Right, awesome story. And self-awareness is a process that includes self-care, the mind, the spirit, the body, or the soul. So as I've said many weeks before, Dr. Brown has a support group that if you come through Eve Speaks, it's free of charge during this crisis that we're having. So, or you can reach out to her on Instagram at ask_Dr. Mom. You can also reach out to me, Angela Gibson, on our page, Angie Speaks, and we will definitely help you with some of the questions you may have regarding getting a career breakthrough. Thank you so much for your time today. Dr. Brown, do you have any last words that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, I'd like to invite people to come to the group. I'm having a group that's going to be focused on forgiveness. And because there's so much pain in the world, at home, in the workforce, in our love life, there's almost certain someone that you need to forgive. So I hope that you will join this group and learn how to do that. Thank you.
Thank you once again, everyone, for joining us in this episode of Clarity in Crisis, Career Breakdown to Breakthrough. I'm hoping that you will get on your journey to have your breakthrough. Have a great day, and we'll see you in another episode next week at 10 a.m. in another episode of Clarity in Crisis. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.